Throwdown Nation, welcome aboard for episode 4 of the Throwdown with Matt. Tonight, it is my pleasure to have with me Book Hemingway as tonight's illustrious guest. How you doing, sir?
Good. Appreciate the platform here.
Absolutely. I've been, like I said before we went live, I've been looking forward to this for a number of days. I've definitely been intrigued to talk with you. So we'll just go ahead and get right into it. First and most obvious question is, how long have you been wrestling?
I'm going on year 7 now. So I've been training for 7 years, 6 years, about 6 years since my first match.
Nice, nice. So who trained you?
I started off in Delaware under Crazy Shay. He runs Asylum Pro Wrestling, which is now based out of Central Pennsylvania. From there, I moved back to Hawaii and really finished up my formal training with the Wild Samoan Training Center, Hawaii, under Aleki and Bonnie Maxon.
Nice, nice. I bet Hawaii was a nice place to be.
Oh, absolutely. I just got blessed being stationed out there with the military and spent most of my life out there afterwards.
What branch of the military were you in?
I was Army from 2004 to 2008.
Okay. So something that we're going to be doing over the course of this is basically playing what I call the speed round game, which is basically where I will say a name, basically a person, a place, or a thing, and you basically say the first thing that pops into your mind.
Sounds fair.
And the first speed round is going to be Eric Bischoff.
WCW.
Yep.
Definitely authority figure.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to pursue professional wrestling?
I always had that dream as a kid, but it wasn't really encouraged. So I really didn't truly consider it until I started at 30, 31 years old. I was visiting local independent shows, and it happened to be my kids asking me, Dad, why don't you wrestle? I just remember having that, rear view mirror moment of, looking in. It's like I can make up an excuse, or I could at least give it a shot.
Yeah. That's actually really cool, because kids are good at encouraging you to follow dreams, because they don't have an understanding of all the realities of adulthood that can keep you from pursuing those kinds of things. So
all the responsibility that comes along with it, and just keeping everything afloat.
Absolutely. Yep. So away from wrestling, what are some of your hobbies and interests? I know you're into homesteading and things like that, and I definitely want to get into some of that with you, because I'm not like a doomsday guy, but I do a little bit of prepping. I just think it's prudent in the present environment.
A lot of that's new to me, just moving into this property. Prior to this, I actually lived in inner city Augusta and on military installations, so a lot of this is brand new to me as well.
Right. So anyway, what would be some of your hobbies and interests away from wrestling?
I'm big into the outdoors, so camping with my kids, fishing, of course, artwork, which is kind of a business on its own, but there's so many different mediums that some of them are hobbies, some of them I pursue a little more professionally.
Got you. So is wrestling anything approaching a full-time thing for you, or do you have a air quotes day job?
It's a full-time pursuit in a sense, just along with the bodybuilding, the training, just, keeping myself mentally and physically fit for it. Uh, in the past couple of years, I've put a major focus on that and stepped away from the commercial artwork to put a focus on it. Uh,
Hmm.
Prior to that, I was commercial fishing at sea, and I completely cut that out when I started wrestling as well.
Hmm. You're sort of a renaissance man. You seem to have really done a lot of things in your life, and that's pretty neat. That's
I,
intriguing.
I've been fortunate to pursue things I'm passionate about in that sense. Absolutely.
So, what kind of ocean fishing were you doing?
A lot of trolling. We would go out on a kayak a couple miles from shore and either bottom fish or actually fish for more pelagic species like tuna and mahi and wahoo. Um, and, at that point, I was definitely more of the ocean going side of things. Just getting back to the freshwater side of things since returning stateside.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, if I'm understanding the timeline and everything correctly, before Book Hemingway, you were Martin Oceans, correct?
That's correct. That
S-
was the name.
so, uh, go ahead.
Yep, that was a name that was initially given to me from my first trainer. It was, I was trying to come up with my own ideas at the time, but at the time it was just kept circling back. You're going to be Marty Oceans. You're going to be Marty Oceans until I finally caved. Okay, I'm Marty Oceans.
Gotcha.
Um, Moving to Hawaii, I kept it a little bit. It was transitioned to a more localized character there as the Kumu, which in
Hmm.
Hawaiian is the term for sacred teacher. Of course, being the blonde hair, blue eyed white guy there. So I was an instant heel and definitely took that role.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And
So,
returning stateside, I had a lot of freedom with what I was doing in character. I was kind of looking for suggestions from trainers, not getting a lot of feedback. And I had the mentality, well, if I'm going to be on my own, I'm really going to pursue something that is my own.
gotcha. So, do you have, I guess, a base company that you mostly work with, or are you kind of a hired gun and you'll go wherever there's a show?
Previously, when I was in Georgia, I was pretty much everywhere I would get booked. Since
Hmm.
relocating up here to Indiana, I'm kind of like really isolating myself to White River Wrestling with Jake Oman training there. I have wrestled with a couple other places, Signal 10 Wrestling locally. And I did the Paul Cade event, which is a big event for this area in Kentucky as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I found a couple of your Signal 10 matches on YouTube and took a look at those. So, they say that the best wrestling personas are kind of yourself turned up to 11. So, tell me a bit about the Book Hemingway persona, and I guess compare and contrast him with everyday you.
Um, I would consider it the voices in your mind that are always second guessing yourself, not being good enough when it comes to the artwork. Of course, reaching out to promoters is always a challenge in wrestling itself. So it's the voice in the back of my mind, pretty much encouraging me to keep trying or just to be more persistent and just not care on the opinion of others. Um, yeah. As far as me, like I'm trying to become more patient with it, but the Hemingway character will not show that at all.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, the name itself, there's from my perspective anyway, there's different ways to look at it. I mean, obviously you're making reference to Ernest Hemingway, I would think. And are you speaking of the books of Hemingway, or are you looking to get booked as Hemingway, or
It is
is
definitely
it all of the above?
It's all of the above. It's definitely a play on words where I see a lot of other wrestlers with, Book in their name. So I
Right.
pretty much had the idea of, well, what if Book was the first name? I wanted to evolve from the Ocean's name, moving away from the coast and into the Midwest. But the Hemingway name still kind of, portrays that lifestyle that I'm living.
Right. Right. It really that was actually one of the things that intrigued me into reaching out to you. I loved the name. I just thought that is just really cool. It's a very cerebral, very literate type of persona, and that's something that really resonates with me. So
It's something I researched going into it. I saw nothing on Hemingway ever being used in wrestling, so I was like, it's a time for me to change now and just absolutely run with it.
right, right. So speed round. Paul Heyman.
Icon. Um, I grew up in Delaware, so ECW was a childhood local promotion for me. I remember them visiting stuff like Newark High School in Delaware. Um, and of course, they were always on late night TV, past when I was
Yeah.
supposed to be up and everything else anyway. So that was just, it was a new style of wrestling for the time, too, especially when they brought in Benoit and Guerrero and Psychosis and a
Hmm.
lot of the WCW crossovers.
Oh yeah. Yeah, ECW hit. I guess I was probably a couple of years out of college at that point, and I've been watching wrestling, varying levels of fandom since I was around 11, and I'm going to be 55 in September. So I've seen a lot over the years, and yeah, I mean, ECW really changed the game in so many ways, and just having started that whole revolution, Heyman's really a Hall of Famer just based on that. But the guy has contributed so much to the industry over the years. It's just amazing the accolades that guy really has.
Even now, when a promotion's getting hot, they always go back to referring to the crowd as ECW like, or just, going back to that fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your actual hometown?
I'm in Winchester, Indiana right now.
Okay. And what would you say is your favorite thing about Winchester?
It's definitely small community. Just getting my boys involved with the school and everything. We'll see the principal and local stores and everything else. So it's definitely that small town feel. One of my favorite things is the local town square with the clock towers. A lot of the Midwest towns have the clock towers, and I'm just absolutely attracted to that for some reason.
No, that's really cool. Yeah, you really don't see a lot of those anymore, and it really does sort of harken back to a bygone day. And in so many ways, the bygone days are really gone forever. I mean, so being able to kind of latch on to I guess harbingers of what many would say was a better time really is pretty neat. But yeah, how old are your boys? I've got a 14-year-old, and he's fixing to start his sophomore year in high school. Man, the time flies.
It does. I have one that's 12 and or one that's 10 and one that's about to be 13.
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, the teenage years definitely caught up on me. It came out of nowhere because I mean, just a few years ago we were dealing with the moves, and I remember them as kids. And now he's at that age of joining junior high and high school soon enough, and at least we're in a place where we're settled now and not moving every couple of years. So that's a big relief for the family in general.
Yeah, especially at getting around that age, being able to kind of put roots down at least for a while is really such an important thing. To be able to give them a sense of stability and identity and all that. But so tell me about your very first match. What was it like? How did it go? Etc.
I honestly can't remember the name of my opponent, sad enough, because it was another student I was training with. It
Okay.
just happened to be his only match for whatever reason. Um, I do remember going overtime in that sense, but I do remember not having any hiccups in the match itself. Uh, it definitely seemed like a surreal experience, having always wanted to do it, and then finally getting the chance to be in ring, actually perform, and getting feedback from other people in the locker room.
Right. Right. So, having touched on the first match, tell me about your favorite match that you've been a part of.
So far, I would have to give that to a Micromania match against one of my trainers, Aleki Lee. Um, it's one of the few opportunities I've had to really wrestle one of my trainers and somebody I knew that had just years of experience on me and could, guide me through things and at least teach me something there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really like wrestling people with more experience than me, so that would have to be my top one. Is just getting to wrestle my trainer at that time.
Yeah, they definitely say iron sharpens iron, and you know, and being in there with somebody of greater experience, I'm sure can just be an invaluable thing. Because sometimes it's just the little things, the little subtleties that you can pick up on that really can make a lot of difference to your own game, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Another one that really stands out was somebody you were mentioning earlier, in Drew Adler. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I knew he had a lot of experience and really wanted to work him with the Phoenix Wrestling experience in Augusta and had that opportunity in a triple threat before leaving.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Yeah, uh yeah, as I mentioned, he was my second one of these, and just what a great guy. Really had a good time with him. So, speed round. Let's see here. Uh, Brian Danielson.
Underrated. Um, he's so good for the frame of a guy he is. He's not the biggest guy. He's always stayed natural, um, but he works hard for where he's kept himself in wrestling. Um, he doesn't always like the tannin and stuff like that, but he sees the value behind it, and I've seen those in some of his YouTube seminars and different stuff like that. Um, ultimately, I have a lot of respect for him staying a part of it, even after his injuries and everything.
Right, right. So, if you can narrow it down to just a few little anecdotes, what have been some of the most interesting or unusual experiences that you've had in wrestling?
Unusual experiences. Um, I've definitely shown up to a place where they've had the address wrong on the poster, so not as many people showed up to the event as they were expecting or hoping for. Um, Unexpectedly, I had a rope break in the middle of a match recently, which was the first time that had happened to me. So it was something I really didn't realize happened until I turned around and saw it way after the fact. So it's learning to react in those
Compensate.
moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I've heard of that happening. I've never seen it personally, but I would imagine it would be difficult to work around. I mean,
Luckily, it was the bottom rope, so we had the
ah,
best of all three that could break.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I guess if one's got to break, the bottom's the best to have go.
Yep.
So, um, so what has been your most unusual encounter with a fan?
Um, I haven't had too many strange ones, luckily.
Well,
Of
that's
course,
good.
given the artist gimmick, I've had a lot of people tell me I can't paint and other stuff. And then, of course, kids coming up to me when I am painting at the merchandise booth and just picking up a brush and painting along with me. Most times I don't mind.
I was going to say that's kind of neat, you know. It's
most of the time I leave the detail stuff for home anyway.
Yeah. So in your personal wrestling style, who would you say are some of your influences?
A lot of the early ECW guys, particularly Rob Van Dam. I love the movements of Sabu. I grew up with a lot of the early 90s wrestling with Shawn Michaels, Bret the Hitman Hart, Razor Ramon. There's many influences I can name from each individual promotion. And even now, as a worker, I kind of watch it differently and look at a lot more local guys than I do at the mainstream wrestling.
Yeah. You had mentioned, earlier when we were talking about ECW, you were mentioning Chris Benoit. He still ranks among my absolute favorites of all time. I can separate his body of work from the man himself. The way things ended with him obviously was just horrendous, tragic, and he definitely went down some dark paths and ended up being a horrendous human being. But in terms of his work, there were few better. He still, as a wrestler, he ranks very high for me.
Yeah, one of the best technical of all time. Yeah,
no
regardless
doubt.
of what he did as a human. Absolutely.
Right. And, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people can't make that separation. They just throw him out as just being just horrible and never want to see him again. And to me, you can't really do that because, yes, ultimately he decided to do what he did, but he was also extremely sick, so.
In ring, if you erase his history, you erase a lot of others that worked with him.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. So, do you have an all-time favorite match as a fan?
Too many to name, to be honest. I always go back to the Iron Man match. Just as well, I like a lot of CM Punk's early work when he was doing a lot of his Iron Man stuff on the independent scene as well. All-time favorite match. I think there's different moments that stand out to me, but collectively as a match, not one stands out like that. No.
Right. Yeah. I struggle with that myself. To me, I almost have to say, different eras as opposed to particular matches, because having watched the industry for 40 plus years, it really would be hard to narrow it down to just one. It's more like one in each era that I've watched.
And even
maybe,
different area. Japanese wrestling is completely different from what you'll see in Lucha Libre. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's stuff I like from each. So I just try to incorporate, what I'm passionate about from every element.
Right. Something, and I was actually talking with Drew Adler about this. Something that I've noticed really since kind of the rise of AEW, there is a lot of tribalism among wrestling fans.
Yes.
And there's a lot of diehard AEW fans who nothing WWE could do could please them, and same with the diehard WWE fans. Nothing AEW can do is right, and I like all of it, and I feel like the tribalism among fans in many ways is just counterproductive to the whole thing. You know, if you don't like it, don't watch it.
All right,
But
it's telling me connection lost.
I'm still seeing you.
All right, you there with me?
Yeah, are you hearing me?
Connection lost there for a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was good on my end, but anyway, I was just saying, you know, that the tribalism is just in my mind counterproductive. You know, if you don't like it, don't watch it. But you know, there's really styles and types of wrestling for virtually anybody out there if you look hard enough. So
Absolutely. And yeah, I try to keep my social media to that where I'm not negative or knocking on anybody because a lot like art, there's different ways to go about it. And ultimately, it's the end result that matters.
absolutely. So who would be, and this can be present day or past, who would be a dream opponent that you would love to work?
Rob Van Dam. I just think it's still possible with his age and everything. It's a dream opponent. And now, with where I'm at, Jake Oman, who I'm training with now, I love his work rate. I love his style. He recently had an excellent match with Matt Riddle at the Square Circle Expo. I just know he can absolutely test me and put me in a better place.
Nice, nice. So, well, let me pull up the list here, and we'll do a couple more in speed round here. Okay, AJ Styles.
Phenomenal.
Yeah,
He had a lot of high regard in Georgia while I was down there and everything. Hearing his story of burning out, taking a break away, and then coming back, giving it one last serious run when he did get signed is really inspiring.
absolutely. Let's see here. Jake Roberts.
Champion. He really should have been champion at some point, somewhere in his career. He was just so good on the microphone, so good in his methodical movements and everything. And I look at him a lot just with my own speech patterns and everything because I know I'm not the most enthusiastic person in the world. So I have to learn from people like him how to manipulate my voice and get the reaction that I want.
The thing I loved about Jake Roberts, you know, I first saw him actually on Georgia Championship Wrestling when we really about the time that we moved to Georgia in '83. And the thing that was so different about him, especially back then, is on his promos, he would rarely raise his voice. He was just very quiet, but he could just project such menace. But no yelling, no screaming, just quietly stating what he was going to do. And that's scarier than somebody yelling, screaming, and foaming at the mouth. I mean,
Absolutely. Just those slow, methodical pronunciations and stuff like that is what I'm absolutely driven towards. And yeah.
yeah, he was, and you know, seeing the DDT having been relegated to a mid-match move rather than a finisher, to me is I hated to see that because when Jake would do a DDT on somebody, you weren't getting up. I mean, he made it look so devastating. I mean,
I've often thought the same with Randy Orton's version. Like it's such a good version of it that it would make a excellent finish.
yeah. Oh, that draping
Yep,
DDT.
where he drapes
Yeah,
over the ropes and takes you from the outside.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So it sounds like you have, but over the course of your wrestling career, have you had a chance to meet any of your heroes?
I've met famous people. I wouldn't say directly my heroes. I haven't met a lot of the early '90s stars. I wished, I would have met Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and a lot of that era.
Hmm.
Um, I have gotten to meet a few people that I missed out on a lot of their WWE career when I was just taking a break from watching. Chris Masters is a perfect example. I did a seminar with him in Hawaii. Um, I knew exactly who he was, obviously coming in, but I just missed most of his career watching it while I was taking a break from watching myself.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, as I mentioned, very varying levels of fandom over the course of your life. Sometimes just life takes you other directions and you tune out for a while. But it's something that's always meant a lot to me, and I've always gone back to it. And the nice thing about wrestling is it's always there for you.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I know that you presently are in the process of coming back from an injury. You said it
Yes.
was a shoulder.
Yes. Separated a shoulder on a Dragonplex. So a good
Okay.
old full Nelson, and he drug me backwards, and just poor timing of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine stuff like that kind of comes with the territory. But
Yeah.
so
Prior to this, I had dislocated my knee on a simple stomp, so it really can happen on the simplest of movements.
yeah. Well, uh, since turning 50, man, weird stuff starts to happen with your body. I have thrown my back out sneezing, so it's very strange. 50 is a strange time. I'll just prepare you for that. But
I'm definitely aware of not getting any younger, so and taking care of
no,
myself as I go further along, taking a little more time between injuries and making sure I'm fully healed before going 100% again.
right, right. That's smart if you're looking for longevity. So, what hurts right now besides the shoulder?
Um, Luckily, it's just a shoulder. I recently had a dog bite that actually went through my fingernail and everything, but luckily that healed up enough that it's no longer an issue. I did train this week, so I have the simple upper back pain from taking my first bumps in a couple weeks. And
Right,
of course, running ropes, every time you'll get those bruises like across the same line in your back as your body's just taking the wear and tear of it again.
right, right. Okay, so here is actually a new question. This is one I'm kind of adding to the repertoire, and that is, if you could only be one, would you rather be great in the ring or great on the mic?
Great on the mic. There's more longevity behind it. You can be a manager, you can go to commentary, you can be an antagonist. Even if you only wrestle on occasion, people will want to see you get your ass kicked by the time you get in there if you're good on the microphone.
Right, right. So, do you yourself have a preference between working babyface or working heel?
Most of my career has been heel. Um,
Hmm.
I kind of lack the natural energy to get the crowd behind me right away. Um, and going over video, a lot of my body language will show face minus the face, and that's the most important part. So I prefer working heel.
Gotcha, gotcha. I have always, as a fan, I have always gravitated more toward the heels. I've always found them more compelling characters, usually, because, most of the great heels have a reason that they're a heel. They're not just a heel because they're an asshole. There is some storyline reason that makes sense as to why they are the way they are. And I just find that part of it fascinating.
I would
And
agree with that. Where the best baby faces are heels all the way through. They just turn their energy from disliking the crowd to disliking the opponent that the crowd doesn't like as well.
right, right. And I find it interesting when a heel goes face or a face goes heel, and really nothing about the character really changes, or if there are changes, they're just very subtle, and it's all just about the crowd reception. I find that interesting, the people that can seamlessly make that transition and really
That's
not change. Yeah, that's art. I
that's
mean,
absolutely how I feel about The Rock and Stone Cold. As like they didn't turn baby faces; they were still the same exact persona when they switched. It was just the crowd actually getting behind them was like, oh, maybe he's right.
yeah. Yep. So, so you said you've been in the business really for about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
So since you've been in that length of time, tell me about the impact of the pandemic on what you were doing on I mean, obviously everything shut down for a time during
We
that, while the world was trying to figure everything out. So tell me about that time.
I honestly think Hawaii took the worst of that. We were completely shut down for 2 calendar years. Um, Halfway in between there, we were allowed to do private parties with up to attendance of 10 or 20 people. And we did end up doing a couple birthday parties in between there just to keep ourselves moving and active and training. Um, yeah, there were no shows, wrestling shows on Oahu for 2 calendar years when COVID hit.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it was that was a very strange time in pretty much everybody's life. I mean, it was completely uncharted territory. So,
They tried shutting down the beaches and everything in Hawaii just to avoid the spread and everything else. And of course, the locals fought it, and it, yeah, it was crazy for a period of time there on island.
absolutely. So, speed round, Madison Square Garden.
Historic. Um, you go back to like the favorite wrestling matches, and I instantly thought of Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon in that first ladder match, and of course, that was that WrestleMania there at Madison Square Garden.
Mm-hmm.
Um, of course, I have those memories of those two main WrestleManias there, and then a lot of the early house shows and Raws and stuff like that, even before it was Monday Night Raw and stuff like that.
Right, right. Yeah, back when it was what was it? Raw is War.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
before that, I believe they had Saturday Night Wrestling and some other ones that they
Yeah.
had pre-taped there. That's definitely a WWE zone because I don't know of any other wrestling promotion that's ever run in Madison Square Garden.
No, I think some other I think some other companies have tried, and the Garden just rebuffs them and says no. you know, tradition. So overall, what are your thoughts on the current state of the industry?
It's definitely getting more open to people. There are a lot more wrestlers coming in than ever have before, and I just think that's a part of the state of the wrestling being more accepting to people, especially with all the different communities and everything, just trying to get everybody involved in everything. Um, it makes it hard for a lot of people with experience reaching out to promoters because there's always fresh faces out there. So you really
Right,
have to do something to stand out and stick in people's mind if you want them to remember you.
right, right. Yeah, it's interesting. As a kid watching wrestling, back then it was really the land of the giants, and
Yes.
now you've got so many wrestlers that are of a smaller body type, but are incredibly physically gifted, and it's I think the current product it's really an exciting and fun time to be a fan. Because there are things going on right now, within particularly WWE. with them finally having gotten out from under Vince McMahon, I feel like a lot of stuff is happening now that would never have happened under Vince, like this current crossover with TNA. And,
Absolutely.
I mean, in
Even
many
some of the tours in
ways,
Japan.
yeah, in many ways, it's almost harkening back to the old territory days where it feels like anything is possible, and it's kind of neat.
That growth since AEW became a product has been promising, where there's more places for wrestlers to go, and seeing
Hmm.
NWA kind of regrow. Of course, Ring of Honor made a small comeback. TNA's making a big comeback, and there
Hmm.
are some other smaller companies that are traveling around quite a bit. Game Changer, um, there's quite a few.
Yeah, MLW. Some of the
Absolutely,
yeah, and they say a rising tide lifts all ships, and uh, and having plenty of places to work and places to go is just good for business.
I would say
And,
so, especially for
and,
the amount of wrestlers that are out there today.
right, right. So, knowing everything you know now, if you could give any advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Probably start younger. I started at 31, so I definitely took a late start to wrestling compared to most folks, and a lot of people will retire at the age I'm at now, and I feel like I'm just entering my best years. But I'm being patient about it. I'm letting myself heal from injuries and being a little more selective on my bookings now that I'm in a permanent spot.
Right, right. It sounds like you're playing a smart game, and being an old and not meaning older, but for this game, an older participant, you've got to play a smart game. I mean,
Absolutely. It is definitely a young man's game, and they can take the miles and everything and be good to go the next week and do the same, where I will feel it.
right, right. Well, it's interesting, going off on a bit of a tangent here. Somebody else that got into the business comparatively older was Diamond Dallas Page.
Absolutely.
I think he was pushing 40 when he got into it. And he's somebody else that has done a lot of good. Even beyond his in-ring career with this yoga program he's got, he has helped a lot of people.
He's helped
So
rehabilitate quite a few, yeah, well-known stars from that I grew up with and everything else.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Jake Roberts, for instance, and even he was a big help to Scott Hall as well. Razor
Absolutely.
Ramon. So do you have any advice for young people that would be potentially looking to break into the business?
Find a good training atmosphere, somewhere you can continuously train. Avoid just going somewhere for 12 weeks and calling it quits. There's a lot more to learn after you graduate the basics of pro wrestling. Um, Even 7 years in, I love learning from different people. That's been a big experience for me, having the military moves over the years and just getting a different insight on how different people put the product together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in life, there is always something to learn. And, like I was saying earlier, it can be the most subtle thing, but, if it's something that you pick up on and you just sort of stick in your back pocket, the little things really can make a difference. So,
And that's, yeah, what I'm
um,
learning the most as I transition characters and settle into a place permanently.
right, right. So, do you have a particular favorite move that you just really enjoy doing? Or on the flip side of that, do you have a move that you won't do?
Um, there are moves that I won't do to other people just for the protection side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of probably my favorite maneuver is the frog splash elbow.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like jump up to the rope like a Rob Van Dam, and it's just something I've evolved over the years, and I've seen it a couple other places, of course, the Briscoe, and um, I wasn't a fan of taking the last Dragonplex I took, but I should have asked like if I was landing flat or rolling through. But those
Oh
kind of
yeah,
things.
that shoulder, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, and I like throwing a sling blade from different positions. So a lot of times, like you'll see it when somebody throws a clothesline, like I'll duck it and throw it at the same exact time, and just trying to
Mm-hmm.
come up with more unique ways to get into it, so it's not as predictable.
Right. Right. But yeah, I was talking again with Drew Adler, um, about moves that not to do, and yeah, one that kind of springs to mind. A lot of places have banned the vertebraker, just because there's just so much potential for something to go wrong with that particular maneuver. Because if you're doing it, you can't see how your partner has positioned himself. you know and I refer to the opponent as the partner, because ultimately it's a
That's
dance.
one I would probably turn down on the spot as well, where it's like unless I'm in complete trust of the opponent at that time, where it's maybe next time.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But something that I've done in all of these is I have let the current guest pose a question for the next guest. And so my previous guest was a guy named Asher Rain. He is pretty new to the business. He's only been in for about 9 months. He said he's about 50 matches in. Really, really nice young fella. But he posed this question: if you could hold any belt, and he's meaning more the design of the belt, in the history of wrestling, what would it be? What is your favorite belt?
um, Growing up in the early '90s, the Golden Wing WWE belt or WWF belt at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, to me, one of my favorites is the NWA belt. Just the history behind it; it's so recognizable.
Oh, the 10 pounds of gold. Yeah.
Of course, yep.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, growing up as a kid, I I lived in the South, so I was more of a uh, you know Florida Championship, Georgia Championship, WCW kid. I knew of WWE, but I really didn't start to watch that much until I was in college. So um, but yeah, so the old NWA belt has a definite soft spot in my heart. I just think that was just the belt.
Yeah, the lineage behind it and all of the wrestlers photographed with that belt alone, it's just the history of it alone.
Oh yeah, yep. So as this is a series, do you have a question that you would like to pose to the next guest? And I can go ahead and tell you the next guest is going to be this Thursday night. I've actually got a guy named TJ Era,
Oh,
who
okay.
is
I trained with him.
oh, okay, so you know
Yep.
him, yeah. So is there a question you would like to pose to TJ?
Um, Give me a second on that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
If you can't think
I'll
of
circle back
anything,
to it.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you can't think of anything tonight, you can always message me. So
Okay. Yeah, I like TJ, and also I'll definitely come up with something for him as well.
okay.
I would like to know, yeah, actually here it is. Like what does he want his end result from wrestling to be?
Okay.
Whether it be WWE, whether it just be, that local championship, or just improving who it is upon a person locally.
That's a good question. How would you answer that? What is your dream end game with this?
That's something I've thought about a lot recently, moving and getting older. I personally think I'm beyond the age where WWE will be looking for me unless I have something extremely unique to offer them. So I am just looking for comfort in helping the younger generation come up, potentially start training a few years down the line when I feel I have enough worthy experience to pass on enough.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I saw TJ wrestle at the PWE show I was telling you about, and he actually is now the #1 contender for the Savannah River Brewing Company Championship. So it's nice to see him progressing in contention and all that good stuff. But
It's
yeah,
good to
yeah, it
hear
seemed
because he definitely liked putting in the work when I was training with him at the Palmetto with Ethan Case, and also really good individual for it.
well. What's interesting is, years ago, probably 8 or 10 years ago now, my wife and I were out at a restaurant near where we live, and Ethan Case was our waiter that night. And I don't even remember how the subject came up, but he mentioned that he wrestled. And, you know, so I got his social media information, and I've been, sort of loosely following him over the years, and I saw that he opened up the academy and all that. And actually I'm working on I'm getting him on one of these as a guest. Because
Excellent.
I would love to hear his perspectives on some stuff, but he's a good dude. I'm
Yeah, I learned an
definitely.
incredible amount on just match psychology while I was with him the last year. Living in Augusta, I was driving over to South Carolina to learn from him.
Yeah, Ethan's a good guy. I'm so, like I said, hopefully I can get him on one of these days soon. But so we're getting toward the end of things now. So do you have any upcoming shows or anything like that you would like to hype?
Um, White River Wrestling, our next show is September 22nd. It's a ways away, but it gives me plenty of time to heal and get back out there and give 100%. This
Awesome.
weekend, I'm doing a simple thing with Axe and Sledge supplements. Supplement time. They're doing a pump fest in local GNC. Just painting live in person and just hanging out with Seth Feroci and a couple of the IFBB pro bodybuilders that they have coming in there.
Well, very cool. I'm looking over at the Instagram tab, and looks like we've actually got several people in the chat. Actually, a lot of my music related folks are in the chat watching. We've got folks from a band up in Virginia called A Day in Pompeii. They're hanging out in the chat watching this, and
Very cool.
but anyway, like I said, we're getting toward the end of things, but I want to thank you for your time. This has really been a really great conversation, and I've definitely enjoyed this, and so thank you for taking the time to come on this with me.
No, I really appreciate the platform. It's a good opportunity to expose a little of myself without exposing too much of the business.
Right. But actually, before we get going, you had mentioned that you were thinking about an angle involving the death of kayfabe. and that you
Absolutely.
wanted to, yeah. So expound on that.
Um, Pretty much like a lot of my wrestling characters, is just that extension of me. You
Mhm.
know, the hunting, the fishing, the artwork, it's all, really who I am. The death of kayfabe is just me exposing little bits of myself without exposing the business.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, for those of you that have been watching this live, thank you. For those of you that are going to be seeing this on a replay or video on the various platforms, thank you for that as well. If you like what we've got going here, definitely spread the word. And this thing is really starting to take on a life of its own. And I love doing this, and I'm excited to watch it grow. So everybody have a safe night, a safe rest of your week, and I'll be back here actually tomorrow night at 7:30 Eastern with a band called Embracing the Enemy. I'm going to be doing a music related stream with them. And then Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back with another episode of The Throwdown with TJ Era. So that'll be a lot of fun. And then next week, I'm actually doing episodes of The Throwdown Monday through Friday. Uh, so it's like I
Good, you're
said,
still busy.
the bookings are definitely rolling along, and I'm excited to see where this is all going to go. So anyway, um, everybody have a great night,